In Malaga, and I'm joined today by the Deputy Premier, Minister for Transport and local member Rita Safiotti. I'd also like to thank Peter McCrory and the Volgren team for hosting us today. This factory in Malaga is the engine room and has been the engine room of bus manufacturing in Western Australia for decades. It's an important part of what we do in WA to manufacture our own buses as part of our public transport network. As you can see, behind us we have buses from all walks of life which are utilised in our transport system, and it's great that Volgren can employ around 100 people churning out buses around about 1.7 a day, making sure that we continue to have a great flow of buses, comfortable buses for people of Western Australia to enjoy. And last year, the first locally made electric buses rolled off the production line here at Malaga as part of our commitment to boost electric buses on our network. And today we're announcing a plan to ramp up bus manufacturing in WA. Under WA Labor, our bus fleet is going electric. WA Labor will begin the transition to fully electric bus fleet for Western Australia. From the day we are elected, we will no longer place orders for diesel buses and will ramp up manufacturing electric buses on our network. We'll locally manufacture around 100 new electric buses every year as we progressively phase out the diesel buses on our network. And we'll deliver new electric charging infrastructure at our bus depots across the city and regions as we begin the rollout right across the state of an electric bus public transport fleet. We've already seen how well West Aussies can make electric buses here in WA. Volgren has been manufacturing electric buses for WA since last year. We know we have the capability, we know we have the capacity, and now we're ready to take the next step. And they're going to continue, and Volgren will, of course, ramp up their electric bus workforce to make sure that they can meet the demand. We've already got electric cat buses on the road in our city, and you've seen what a great success that they have been. That's given us the confidence now to step forward to this next phase. Every electric bus we put on the road saves around about 40 tonnes of carbon emissions every single year, which is made up of around 22,000 litres of diesel that each bus uses each and every year. Our plan will create local electric manufactured buses and help the state transition to net zero by 2050. It's part of WA Labor's Made in WA vision to put manufacturing back at the heart of our economy. We committed to making more things here as part of our plan called Made in WA. It's about building our ferries, our trains and our buses here in Western Australia. So what it means is over the coming years, it doesn't matter what part of our public transport system that you catch, we will be able to confidently say that they will all be stamped Made in WA. That means more local jobs and a clean energy future for Western Australians. And only WA Labor has the experience to deliver our Made in WA plan, and only WA Labor will do what's right for WA. And now I'll hand you over to the Transport Minister.
Thank you very much, Premier. As has been highlighted, we have been undertaking trials of electric buses across the network. We started in Joondalup with the Joondalup CAT, in which we trialled electric buses across the Joondalup CAT service. We also upgraded that infrastructure there to have solar panels and also batteries, so it was fully electric. We've then rolled out more CAT buses throughout the city, and we upgraded the infrastructure at Elizabeth Quay with 16 new charging infrastructure to support the electric CATs. And this commitment will mean that we'll move away from producing any more diesel buses in WA. Should we be re-elected, the last diesel bus would move out of the last diesel bus would be manufactured in April of this year. We've seen our Made in WA policy when it comes to rail cars, when it comes to diesel buses, and we've seen the incredible employment outcomes. Over 100 people work in this facility. We've got apprentices in auto electrics. We're all about training young people for the future. So this is a great policy that will continue to support our bus network. The feedback from passengers has been very positive about the electric buses, more room inside. They're a great new addition to the network, and we'll be upgrading our infrastructure to support the electric buses. That includes new depots, in particular around Henley Brook, Forestfield, Bayswater and Karrinyup. Upgrades are actually underway now to support charging infrastructure, and over time, when we rebuild or upgrade depots, we'll be placing that charging infrastructure. So not only is this package about, of course, producing electric buses here, it's also making sure we upgrade the infrastructure at key depots to make sure they continue to be able to manage the new buses that come onto the network. This will be over time, we'll be basically phasing out diesel buses, but what the key commitment is today is that we will no longer produce diesel buses in this state.
What's the time frame of replacing all
the entire network? Yeah, for the suburban network, it's around 20 years. So as you basically, existing buses come off the network and reach their end of life, then they'll be replaced with electric buses. So it's about a 20-year net time frame for electric buses.
So there's about 2,000 buses in the fleet currently?
About 1,795, but moving to 2,000, yes.
The reliability of that electric bus service, obviously the CAT runs are quite small, they're quite short.
Yeah.
Are you worried that there are some longer routes where the buses are going to have to recharge more regularly?
Well, that's what we've been doing the testing on, in particular around Joondalup, and as part of not only the CAT service, they put them into normal service too, just to test, in particular, the kilometres run, and also what happens in hillier, more, I suppose, energy-intensive areas. So the feedback's been pretty good. Over 300, I think the average charge is around 340 kilometres. So the feedback's been very, very good in relation to reliability. And of course, in particular with bus routes, they all take different bus routes. Sometimes they go home to the depot, some during the day, which will allow them to recharge as well. But more generally, the feedback's been really good on reliability. That's why we actually did those tests in Joondalup. We did it on the Joondalup CAT and then other services. We're now running them in the Perth CBD. But what we've seen is very, very good reliability. Of course, Volgren has partnered with Volvo, who already produce our diesel buses. They're at the forefront of electric technology, whether it be buses or trucks around the world. So we've got state-of-the-art technology. And of course, batteries and battery life is also the key. And we're very confident with the quality of batteries that we have in relation to our buses, in particular, Volvo being a key part of that.
Is there a price difference between
Yes.
a new electric bus and a diesel bus?
Yes, there is. So a diesel bus is around 650,000 to purchase. An electric bus is $1 million. But the key point of difference is that over 15 years of an operating life, an electric bus saves $1 million. Because of the key savings, first of all, in diesel costs, and as diesel prices increase, we believe that saving will be greater over time. There's also in relation to rehabilitation of brakes and other maintenance. So there's very strong operational savings. So while upfront there's additional costs in both the purchase and making sure we upgrade the infrastructure, over time the annual operating savings start kicking in and outweighing some of those upfront costs.
Are there particular areas where people can expect to see those electric buses hit the road in the next year or so?
Absolutely. So they'll continue to roll out through the CBD, but as we finish the infrastructure, for example, at Henley Brook, the new bus interchange or bus depot, that's due to finish in April this year. And for example, that will have all the charging infrastructure. It has solar panels too, so it will be able to charge with renewable power as well, which is another saving for us. So we believe operationally this will save a lot of money over time. Of course, we've been working to support getting the electric buses produced here. As I said, the other point that's been made is that because we started with the initial 18, a lot of training's been undertaken, so now we can go and go full electric knowing that all the staff and the workers have been trained.
What about regional fleets?
Yeah. So we'll also be moving to that as well. That's going to be over about 25-year period. We'll start moving to electrify regional fleets, but of course we've got to make sure we have the right charging infrastructure, and that's for the Transperth sort of services in regional towns, Trans Bunbury and other services. Retrans WA will continue to work on that as well.
Will any routes need to change for the public to accommodate the new buses? And perhaps their performance isn't quite as long, and routes will stay the same?
No, we'll be delivering on the same routes. So look, as I've said, we've done this in a very deliberate manner. We've done testing. We've worked really closely through our partners with Volgren and Volvo. It's been a very strong partnership, and it's one where has supported WA workers, made sure we get the best out on the road, and we're very confident with the reliability and the affordability of this program.
It's the first election campaign in a while where there hasn't been a train line committed to, or like a big project. I appreciate you've got Metro there, but it's safe to say this is the end of. It's safe to say this is the end of MetroNet Phase 1, and what does planning involve for the next stage, and where can we expect to see lines coming in the future?
Okay, well, we're very much focusing on finishing MetroNet Stage 1, and of course that includes the Armidale line transformation, the new station in Midland, and all the other works like Thornley Coburn, so very focused on delivering. We're very much now focused on making sure we get the bus network, but also the ferry network. And I say that ferry network will need a lot of work, and we're very keen to start that, should we win, to get on with it and deliver that ferry network. Renew lines, as I said, we've got very much focusing on making sure we can, in a sense, identify some of the gaps out there, like Scarborough Beach, and that's why we've introduced the Surf Cat. So we think there's a whole range of modes, whether it be, for example, high-frequency cat services like the Surf Cat, whether it be the new ferry system, and we also look at how we can continue to support the efficiency but also the frequency of key bus services to get that intermodal switch. To be honest, rolling out these significant rail lines, 72 kilometres of rail lines, 23 new stations, is a very, very tough job, and we're making sure that we can get them all operationalised, and then the bus network supporting that effective. And honestly, getting that bus network to really work with the new train lines has always been the biggest challenge.
Obviously, the comparison though is to the original MetroNet in 2013, where there was that ring rail that Thornley Coburn was a part of. Do you see yourself making plans to continue that in the next 4 years?
Look, we're just looking to March the 8th, and we're working to secure a third term, so I'm not looking beyond that. Any other questions?
City of Perth parking overnight, scrapping nighttime fees, nighttime free fees, parking. Any comments on that?
Well, I was a bit shocked. Look, the state government has been doing so much to support activation in the city, whether it be the new ECU, capped fares, which I think has really supported people going into the city, a free public transport for the entire summer, which again has really supported families heading into the city. This is just due to the mismanagement of the Lord Mayor, Basil Zemplis. So a mayor that has completely not focused on the City of Perth, but focused on his Liberal Party aspirations, including running for the seat of Churchlands and trying to become the leader of the Liberal Party while he was still Lord Mayor of Perth.
You were taking 1,000 car parking bays out of the CBD between the Queen's Gardens and the concert hall car park behind it. Do you need to find a replacement to give them that revenue, a replacement for that lost revenue?
I'll say this about the City of Perth. If you look at their finances, a major share of their revenue base is parking fees. Now, with the increased support for public transport, it was always clear that relying so much on car park fares was a vulnerability. Any leader thinking about the future would have been out there supporting new residential living, new apartments, and increasing the rate base. The only way for the City of Perth to continue was to increase people living in the city, and that's being proactive about getting more people to live in the city and greater activity. Now, they failed to do that, and I'll say that again and again. They have failed to create a sustainable revenue base for the city. They've been out there attacking this, attacking that, politicising everything, when they should have been focused on creating a sustainable rate base. This has always been a key problem, and it hasn't been tackled. The state has been out there supporting new developments through Development WA, supporting new amenity through the swimming pool, supporting new amenity through a new primary school, supporting the ECU campus. So you need to increase activity, increase your rate base, get more people living. That's the only way that surely they've got a sustainable future. They've been left in not a sustainable way because, as I said, the Lord Mayor's been too preoccupied with Liberal Party. I just want to also mention the RFR, the National Party as well. Okay, just some another shock overnight, not only with the City of Perth rate hike or increase in taxes, but we now have the National Party who is basically taking a knife to RFR. A National Party who is basically destroying RFR. What they're doing is they're dismantling RFR to support the metropolitan area. So let's get this clear. The National Party will be taking money from regional towns and putting it into the metropolitan area under their new policy. Now, this is clearly a policy for the national candidate for Bullwinkle and has no regard for regional Western Australians. They will be moving money from Geraldton and putting it into Gosnells. This is the modern National Party, moving money from Geraldton, from Albany and putting it into Gosnells, which they believe is an outer suburban town. Now, Gosnells is 20 kilometres from the city. So a National Party who is destroying RFR, taking money from regional WA. And if you look at the towns they've mentioned, or the cities, or the suburbs, it's all about Bullwinkle. Doing anything to try and get Mia Davies elected to Bullwinkle. They're sacrificing regional Western Australia, taking money from Gosnells, taking money from Geraldton and putting it into Gosnells. That was another shock from last night. And also removing Mandurah and Dawesville from the metropolitan area. From RFR. Removing Mandurah and Dawesville from RFR. Again, taking money from residents in Mandurah and giving it to residents in Gosnells.
The mayors don't seem to be too unhappy about this.
The Liberal Party mayors?
They were all there.
Yeah, I saw that. All of them are either been former members or current members of the Liberal Party. I saw them.
Taking names.
So again, look, I'll just say, as in shock, the City of Perth increasing taxes on residents was one, but the National Party basically destroying RFR and taking money away from regional towns into the metropolitan area to try and save or secure the re-election of Mia Davies is one of the most incredible things I've seen. And if you put, National Party destroying RFR on a bingo card, I would not have expected it.
The Nationals did say yesterday that the government squandered the potential of RFR, like the government's been spending RFR in areas that should be just coming from a normal government spend. Do you have any comments to that?
We've been spending RFR on the regions. Things like making sure we can continue to support great service delivery in regional WA. On top of RFR, we've spent billions on infrastructure. Like the majority, probably 95% of the regional road funding has not come out of RFR. So we've spent more in regional WA than any government before it. Now the fact is, all they ever focused on was RFR because that's the only part of government they got to control. And so what they've said, to do a deal with the Liberal Party, so what they've said, as should they get in a position to do a deal with the Liberal Party, it'll be contingent on ripping money out of regional WA and putting it in metropolitan Perth. As I said, it wasn't something I was expecting the National Party to say, but I just can't believe that after all of their criticism on this issue, that they have done the biggest centralisation of RFR funds in the history of governments. Ripping money out of Geraldton, ripping money out of Albany and putting it in Gosnells, that's the modern National Party, that's the Metro Nats.
They said they did this though because semi-rural areas like Kalamunda have been left behind by the government. Are you doing enough for those areas?
Oh, let's go through Kalamunda. Kalamunda, we've upgraded the Les Murdy High School.
Yeah, and Hills.
And we've committed to the Eastern Hills. We've created brand new bus services. I know a lot of people that live in Kalamunda. And some of the feedback that I get is they were very excited, for example, about the Kalamunda bus route feeding into the new High Wycombe train station. We continue to support. Another big policy is freight on rail. And one of the reasons we're supporting freight on rail is because a lot of trucks use the hills to come down from the wheat belt to deliver their freight into the port. As I said, we've got new road infrastructure. Kalamunda and Roe Highway interchange was one of the first commitments that we actually delivered. We've committed, together with the federal government, over $60 million for the High Wycombe train station aquatic facility to help support everyone in that area to have a new aquatic facilities. When it comes to schools, when it comes to transport infrastructure, when it comes to services, we have done a lot for the people of the hills and the outer metropolitan area. This is a national party who rallied against Metronet, who rallied against capped transport fares. The people of Kalamunda have benefited from our 2-zone fare cap and will benefit from our 1-zone fare cap. The people of the outer suburbs have benefited from our record investment in public transport infrastructure. The Nationals parties, they criticise it every day. And now they're trying to fool the people. They're trying to pretend that they somehow care about those outer suburbs. We know that this is just a highly political announcement trying to save the political aspirations of the current member for Central Wheatbelt.
Thanks very much, Minister. And this is an exciting announcement today. Under WA Labor, our bus fleet is going electric. And soon you'll be able to see our electric trains, our electric buses and our electric ferries, and you'll be able to say they're all made in WA. Any other questions?
The case of the father who died because an ambulance was too late, the case of the party up the ramp, who's been linked to the ambulance ramp in Mission Hospital, is it time we need to admit failure on tackling the ambulance ramp?
I note a recent national government report which detailed that Western Australia's ambulance response times were the best in the country. But we know we don't always get it right. No health system is perfect. But our ambulance response times are the best in the country, and we'll continue to make sure that we have improvements. That's why we've announced in this election alone the addition of professional paramedics in both Dawesville and in the Australind area, more ambulances on the road. And of course, whenever you see a situation where someone's had a negative outcome in terms of their clinical care, you investigate, you find answers, you make sure it doesn't happen again.
That's cold comfort for the family who's lost a father, though. We may have the best ambulance response time in the country, but he's there.
Well, and that's why I said, look, we don't always get it right. It doesn't always happen perfectly, but we know that our ambulance response times are the best in the country. Now, for this family, the shock and the grief associated with this event, nothing can take that away. But what we will do is endeavour to find answers for that family. And what we'll endeavour to do is to assure that family that because of that experience, it will never happen again.
But do you need to admit failure on the fact that it caused 1,000 hours of ambulance ramping and crisis in opposition? You're now on more than 5,000 hours and you've hit record amounts in the last 6 months. Is it time to admit defeat and the system needs more change?
So the basis of this SAC1 investigation is in relation to the ambulance response time, not the ramping time. And as I said, our ambulance ramping has been rated the best in response times has been rated the best in the country.
Inspired Homes people met with a government department official yesterday, not the minister, because
of caretaker.
Because the caretaker. And they've come out of that meeting saying, look, they are still desperate. This has to be fixed.
Yeah.
They want a meeting with you. Now, obviously, caretaker means you can't do it now, but do you give a guarantee that once you're re-elected as Premier, that you will meet with them personally?
Absolutely. I'll definitely meet with the customers from Inspired Homes. I understand their frustration. I understand their anger. We continue to make sure that Inspired Homes is getting on the process of completing their backlog. But we want them to go to those customers who have been waiting the longest, not to the customers that might provide them with a bigger margin. We continue to look at what the government can do in relation to Inspired Homes cash flow to make sure that they can get on with the job of completing these homes. But look, I understand the absolute frustration and anger of these customers. It's time Inspired Home did the right thing and actually got to the customers that have been waiting the longest.
Building and Energy went in and looked at the financials of niche living.
Yes.
Would you, on becoming re-elected as Premier, direct Building and Energy to track this bloke down, Vass, his name is,
Yeah.
track him down, insist on looking at his books under threat of deregistration?
Yeah, we'll definitely look at Inspired Living. It's Inspired Homes.
Inspired Homes.
Yeah, we'll definitely look at Inspired Homes and make sure that they are solvent, make sure that they have the capacity to complete the homes which customers are still waiting to have built. We want to make sure that those customers get satisfaction. And we want to make sure that those customers get a roof over their head as soon as possible. And upon re-election, if we are so fortunate enough to be re-endorsed by the people of Western Australia, I'll definitely meet with those customers as soon as possible, and we'll definitely make sure that Building and Energy does everything they can to provide the proper regulation and oversight of that company.
Because the only thing that helped the niche living customers, which the government agreed to, there was issues about it, but that the indemnity, housing indemnity insurance was triggered.
Yes.
That solved a lot of their problems. That's what Inspired's looking for, and they want it quickly.
Yeah, now we can only do it if there is a case to be made that Inspired Homes should be deregistered. That was the case that was made in relation to niche living, and that's why we acted. And if Building and Energy find that there is a similar case or a sufficient case to deregister that company so that those customers can access the home indemnity insurance arrangements, well then obviously we'll do that. But we have to actually undertake that investigation first. If I am fortunate enough to be re-elected as the Premier of Western Australia, I'll be meeting with these customers to assure them that we're going to do everything we can to get a roof over their heads.
Has Labor made concessions on the need for amendments to the Aquatic Resources Management Act? This is the act that the fishing families has been campaigning against.
Well, so these were laws that were brought in by the previous government, and we've endeavoured to implement them in an appropriate and timely way. But what we've found is those laws are just too unworkable. We could not get consensus within the industry and amongst rec fishers about how those laws should be enacted. Now, I understand that there is a campaign in relation to this, and it's taking place in the context of an election. Let's be very clear about what the professional fishers want. They want mandatory reporting by recreational fishers. That means if you're snorkelling off Rottnest, you pull a cray out of the water, you'll have to not only maintain your personal record, you'll have to report that to the Department of Fisheries, and you'll have to report that to the Professional Fishing Association that's appropriate to that particular catch. We think that's ridiculous. We think that's unnecessary. Recreational fishers should not be tied up in red tape, but we'll continue to work with the industry interests and the recreational fishers' interests to see if we can find consensus in this area.
Are you likely to pursue amendments in the next term?
Oh, look, we need to take a close look at this to see what is the best way forward. We know that reaching consensus within the industry and amongst recreational fishers is always the best approach, because if we can have everyone working together around making sure our catch remains sustainable, well then that means people can fish into the future.
Were local racing clubs across regional WA and in the city promised or told that there would be a funding package coming for infrastructure upgrades, and you're concerned that some clubs could be forced to close if they don't get that funding?
Well, look, I certainly acknowledge the important role that racing clubs play right across the communities of Western Australia, but particularly in regional WA, where the Racing Association is an important part of the very fabric of that community. It provides jobs, it provides opportunities for people to gather as a community. It's often one of the great social institutions of that area, which is the reason why we backed the Kalgoorlie Boulder Racing Club when it came to their ambitions to create the Golden Saddle event. And it's the reason why I intervened in relation to the Kalgoorlie Boulder Racing Club again in terms of their conversations with the Shire of Kalgoorlie Boulder in terms of water issues. to keep their actual racing season alive. So we'll continue to work with the racing clubs right around the state on a case-by-case basis to work out what continued support they need in relation to their infrastructure.
We've seen some FDV support so far from Labor, but child-focused services haven't seen any additional support, neither has community legal services. Are they going to be included in FDV support?
Well, let me just say, I mean, family and domestic violence has been a big focus for my government. That's the reason why in September last year we had our Family and Domestic Violence Summit. That's the reason why we then had a Family and Domestic Violence Task Force, which made recommendations for 2 rounds of funding, both at the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024. It's the reason why since 2021 alone, we have increased resources for funding for family and domestic violence by over $500 million. It's also the reason why you've seen things such as refuges grow their number of units or beds to accommodate people escaping family and domestic violence by 81 extra units or beds, with another 73 in the pipeline. My government has made family and domestic violence and the elimination of family and domestic violence a significant focus. We've continued to make sure that we support our community legal network, making sure that they have the resources they need. There's always an overwhelming demand in community legal services, so that's why we work with the Commonwealth in terms of some of those funding arrangements, and we'll do more, making sure that the elimination of family and domestic violence is a focus of my government.
But Community Legal WA doesn't have the resources they need currently to turn away thousands of people each week. What are you going to do to help them right now?
Well, we continue to fund them, and I think we had I need to come back to you in terms of the most recent announcements in terms of uplift in relation to their funding. And we know that they do an incredible job for some of the most vulnerable and some of the most disadvantaged people in our community. That's why there is an overwhelming demand for their services, and why we continue to work with them to make sure that they have a level of resourcing which we can afford and which they need.
If you're re-elected, you will be responsible for planning any marking or recognition of the bicentenary in Perth in 2029. That's the next step. What work has gone into that to date, and what do you think Perth needs to do to celebrate and acknowledge that moment?
Yeah, it's a significant event in the life of the Swan River colony, isn't it? But don't forget, someone's going to beat them to that, and that's called Albany. And our work to date has focused on the commemorations in Albany. We've been working closely with the City of Albany, who are working closely with the traditional owners in their area on appropriate, respectful and acknowledgement of this extraordinary milestone in the life of our state. So our focus at the moment is on 2026. The work around 2029 is continuing to evolve. And obviously, we're looking forward to 2029 being an important opportunity to mark an incredible milestone in the life of of Western Australia.
Just on your solar battery,
Yeah, sure.
rebates, do you have any updates on the timing of that? If you'll be bringing it forward, or plans for discussions with the industry?
Yeah, we said we'll bring it in as quickly as possible. We know that for many in the industry, there might be a pause in terms of the rollout of their battery products. Noting, of course, that the vast majority of that industry's activity is in the installation of solar panels. So we'd expect that to continue in the meantime. And we'll work with them, if we're fortunate enough to be re-elected, on the transition to this new period. The reason why we want to work with them is because there's a tsunami of contracts and business opportunities coming for them. They're going to need workers, they're going to need capacity, and that's why we have our package to support not only the manufacturers but the businesses working in this area. Now, as I said yesterday, history is littered with the remains of governments that have rushed in programs, not thought this through, not done it properly. And we want to make sure we get this done properly. And we'll be working, if we're elected on the 8th of March, we'll be working from the 9th of March to bring this program in as soon as possible.
Donations for the Uber driver who was in
Yeah.
the crash $100,000.
I saw that this morning.
As WA Premier, how do you feel in the community?
Look, this warms your heart, doesn't it? I think the poor old driver was one of the forgotten people in this horrible accident, and obviously we've lost a life, and that is horrible and dreadful, and those families continue to hurt today. Nothing can replace their loss. But I'm just so delighted and so proud of the Western Australian public who have now gathered around, put their arms around this young man to make sure that he continues to have the support he needs in what is going to be a long recovery from him from some very critical injuries. Can I also just thank the doctors and nurses who have looked after him, done such an amazing job putting his body back together after this horrible accident. And I think everyone should spare a thought for him as part of this horrible ordeal.
Have you considered making a donation?
I have actually. So I'm going to have a look into that and see what contribution Carly and I can make.
Just back to the solar panels.
Yeah, sure.
So we've heard from businesses this week that had hundreds of orders cancelled. People are waiting until July. What do you say to those businesses that are going to be kind of struggling now that had all these orders cancelled?
Yeah, we're going to work with those businesses to understand their concerns and their struggles. In the meantime, as I said, we'll bring this program in as soon as possible. We have to announce something before the election. We wanted to have a mandate to do this, and the timing of that announcement, obviously, in any sort of new program, produces transition issues. And obviously we expect those businesses to continue to be fairly busy with their solar panel rollout and of course their customers, and these businesses will benefit from a $387 million program. So while for a few short months there might be some difficulties in terms of this transition, there is going to be a tsunami of work for these businesses as we roll this out initially around 40,000 homes across Western Australia.
I mean, WA artist has been selected for Eurovision this year. Have you listened to him?
For Eurovision, yeah, Gojo, fantastic, and I'm so excited that that Marty, our Manji boy, has got an opportunity, and I'm sure Western Australians will be cheering on. Remember, we had Voyager in 2023, and now we've got Gojo. So I'm not sure what the per capita proportion of Eurovision contestants is from Perth or Western Australia, but we must be right up there. I want to tell you about my Eurovision story, right? Okay, here we go. Sorry about this. I beg your indulgence. I want you to go back to 2014. We had Choggum in Western Australia, right? A young, shadow minister was sitting in the audience, and he was blown away by this performance from Guy Sebastian this comes back to the story we told the other day. I was blown away by Guy Sebastian's performance as part of the opening ceremony at Choggum. So I'm fairly new to social media, and I put on Twitter, if Australia was in Eurovision, Guy Sebastian would be our entry. Now, two things happened. One, I've received this avalanche of abuse from Guy Sebastian fans, and I think someone called Guy Sebastian Blue Tick himself say how horrible I was for actually suggesting this, which I thought was a compliment because I've been a Eurovision tragic for many, many years. And two, I was right. When Australia got into Eurovision, he was our entry. That is all.
I didn't have a mic to drop.